Now it's time that we shift gears to a topic that blends passion with strategy. Our next keynote address is on the topic transforming India's sporting ecosystem through scientific athlete development, an inclusive and long term athlete centric approach. And our keynote speaker, who's speaking on the topic, is an alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad and the Doon School of Dehradun, Mr. Rishabh Jaiswal, who founded Sporting Ethos as India's first privately owned sports science and medicine center in 2012. And a decade later, founded Athlete First Foundation to further the efforts towards scientific athlete development in India. Let's join our big hands as we welcome on the stage Mr. Rishabh Jaiswal. Come on, everyone. Can we please have a huge round of applause?
Good morning, everyone. My slides, are my slides available, my presentation? Okay, a very good morning to everyone. Thank you to Team Brand Honchos for inviting me to speak here, giving this opportunity, and it was great to be a part of the initial panel discussion. You learn something new every time you sit with seasoned people in the industry. So I have 10-15 minutes. I'll keep it short, and I would like some participation from the audience. You can just raise your hand or speak out aloud. So if I can, yeah. So let's do this differently, okay? Let's say you are in charge of an organization or you're running a company which helps people climb Mount Everest, right? So a group of people come to you and they want to climb Mount Everest. You are running this company and you have to ensure that they conquer the summit. So if some of you can just raise your hands or tell me what would be your selection criteria in the first place. If you have to get these people and say, okay, you are ready to go and start this project or this particular task. Anyone? Yes, please go ahead. You can just say it loud. So you have to select the people. So you have to create a criteria for selecting the people who are fit enough to actually do this, right? So, yeah. So what are the criteria? I mean, fitness I've already said. What else? Anything else? Any other criteria? As someone who's responsible for them? Money, yes, of course. That's all I think what we are here for. Anything else? Mindset and resilience, that's great. Very good. Okay, we have someone from a scientific bent of mind. That's great. We have to match lactate acid levels. Yes, strength, endurance. What else? Okay, so ideally, so I've had the privilege of not just reading case studies about Everest, but I've had a lecture for someone in the army who took his troop to conquer Everest back when I was an IM. So I actually have a very first-hand account of what all they went through. So the selection criteria would include obviously health and fitness, their prior skill. Obviously, if you're trying to climb Everest, you would have climbed other peaks or have a skill in terms of climbing. Mental strength. You need to be a team player. You have to keep communicating, right? So you can't climb Everest alone. There are a lot of challenges which come your way. You need to be disciplined, and with that comes sometimes very tough decision making. So these are some of the things, which you would typically apply to select someone in the first place to be ready enough to climb Everest. Now this is the easiest path, relatively easiest path I should say, to Everest, where you can see this is from the south side. So you get to Everest base camp, then you see at different altitudes, camp 1, 2, 3, camp 4, and then eventually the summit, right? So, okay, I mean obviously climbing Everest is difficult and you have set out a pathway, but this is not exactly a straightforward path, right? So you're obviously not scaling the peak in one diagonal flow. You're figuring out a route. But also the other thing is, you don't do it in one go. You first climb closer to base camp, you come back again to base camp. You go to camp 1, you come back again. You go to camp 2, similarly you go to camp 3, acclimatize, and come back. So every time you're going up, you're acclimatizing, getting used to some of the conditions, trying to build up your experience, trying to build up your skill set, right? And eventually in the last go, you go all the way up to climb 4 and then try to conquer Everest, right? Now, it's one thing to be a facilitator, a company, sitting somewhere at camp 4 and saying, okay, whoever makes it till here, I will give them that extra push and I have a good success result. But it's another thing to actually help them get acclimatized to camp 1, 2, and 3. So how does this relate to Indian sport? So this is a pyramid I typically use for the athlete development structure in India, right? So at the base, obviously you have the grassroots where a lot of us, a lot of companies are trying to help at the rural level, at the community level, at the tribal level, trying to provide access to multiple sports and providing infrastructure to multiple sports, right? Then slowly some people start doing well. The government is setting up some pathways to kind of identify that talent, but it's still largely unorganized. So you slowly see people doing well, and that is your talent which is identified, right? So that is your base camp. Now, the biggest bottleneck right now, which I'm trying to solve with Sporting Ethos and Athlete First Foundation, is actually the athlete development part, which is camps 1, 2, and 3. Because athletes just don't take their talent all the way. They don't take their skill all the way. There are a lot of other factors which are involved, which goes into developing an athlete and ensuring that they reach the next level, which is what we call high performance. And if you see, I've mentioned consistency there. So an athlete may have all the skill in the world. They may go out and perform really well one-off, but to be consistent is another thing, right? So to be able to achieve that consistency means that you are now experienced, skilled in multiple ways to a certain level before you can even try to get to camp 4, which is your high performance. And then of course, excellence. Modern day sport is all about longevity. When we talk about the legends of any sport, whether in India or abroad, we always see how many years they've played at the highest level, right? So this is what everyone is trying to achieve in sport. So the seeds for longevity are actually again sowed in base camp and in camps 1 and 2 and 3. Because that's only when you can prepare the athletes to go all the way. It's not that once they reach camp 4, you're going to teach them all the skills, because a lot of unexpected things happen. So this is what I look at excellence as. Excellence is consistency and longevity, both coming together. And when we talk about athletes, there are these 4 pillars which lead to excellence. You have skill, you have physical, mental, and tactical. Tactical is when you are out in the field of play, and trying to make decisions on the spot, right? So you look at, obviously, physical fitness is pretty clear. You're trying to manage injuries, your nutrition, your diet, your strength. But also, longevity is a big factor of enjoyment. So although we talk about sacrifices and athletes working hard is a very big part of our culture. If you see the top athletes anywhere in the world, they really enjoy doing it. So enjoyment has to be something which has to be nurtured, because in the beginning you may be doing well, because as a kid you are at 13, 14 getting good results. There's an external motivation, some of us from the HR field would understand, but the internal motivation may not be there. And then tactically, every athlete is trying to problem solve, which is what you do at Everest. Because you will come across unforeseen circumstances even after all the training. You're trying to problem solve on the spot, you're trying to adapt, you're trying to plan, analyze, review consistently. So when all this work goes into working with athletes is when you try to achieve consistency and longevity. Now, scientific athlete development, it's very easy to say. Sports science is usually confused with using a lot of technology or just fancy equipment. But at the end of the day, I think the last panel, I think Mr. Saurabh said it, it's about processes. When you hear the top athletes say trust the process, I'm sure their t-shirts you would have seen of saying trust the process. Why do you say trust the process? Because it's that inherent belief and understanding and self-awareness that this is where I am, this is where I need to be. And if I constantly, on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, keep working on certain things, measure them so that I know I'm improving, that is how you start trusting the process, and you then know that the outcome will eventually come, right? Informed decision making. A lot of athletes, a lot of talent we are losing at the pre-elite level because of their workload and recovery management. Because again, in India, we think the longer, the harder you work, the better you would be. The more you study, the more marks you would get. But it doesn't work that way in sport. So a very, very critical factor right now plaguing even our elite athletes is their workload and recovery management, right? If an athlete is injured, what is the return to sport pathway? Okay, if the pain goes away, is that good enough? Or you really need to strength train to be able to, keep competing again without getting injured? So these are complex issues. You have to get down, you have to roll over your sleeves, and you have to get your hands dirty to be able to make an athlete. So while it's good to facilitate and fund an athlete to travel, to have access to physiotherapy, or to have access to nutrition or supplements, it's still not enough when it actually comes to the overall goal of improving the efficiency of the sporting system ecosystem, where you're trying to basically declog the bottleneck which is there. Now this is the last thing. As again, coming back to a previous example, if you are operating a company which is trying to help people to climb Everest, you also have certain responsibilities, and we are here for corporate social responsibility as well. So while you're trying to help them achieve their target of climbing the summit, and you're trying to ensure that they're in good health, one of the main things is that you have to ensure that they climb back all the way safely, which is what is life after sport, their career after sport. It is very important for us from a responsibility point of view is not to only help the athletes prop up, because even after all this effort, a small percentage will achieve that feat of reaching the summit. But what we need to ensure, in my experience, having worked in this field for the last 12, 13 years, is that when athletes come back with a positive experience and they are skilled enough not only to have the only option of becoming sports coaches, with all due respect, that is when you're trying to give them a better livelihood after sport. So at Athlete First Foundation, one of the three pillars is also to work towards not just the longevity and performance in sport, but the integration back, because every athlete has a second career. So you have to be able to ensure that you equip them for life, and when they come back, they create a positive cycle. When other athletes see them and they say, okay, I can follow sports, or I can follow something which I really am passionate about, I can go all the way. Of course, that is where money part comes in, and that is why we are here, to look at that support coming in from the corporate world, saying that, look, okay, if this is the vision, we are going to back it all the way, so that we are not only taking the athletes to the next level, we have a short-term objective of performance in sport, the outcome, the impact in sport, but a longer-term objective where you can score 10 on 10 if you equip athletes for life. And at the end of the day, we are not only talking about individuals, because a lot of companies we go to, they say, okay, we don't want to fund a handful of athletes, that's not enough impact, and I understand. But at the same time, what we are working towards is creating an efficient system, an inclusive system which is unbiased. So whether you are a para-athlete, whether you are an emerging sport athlete which is not an Olympic sport, the idea is to develop a very, very efficient system, a pipeline where anyone trying to participate in sport and pursue sport can follow it. So that is what our intent is. Quickly about what we do at Athlete First Foundation. We have run 1 year of a pilot project, because we are just completing 3 years, and that's why I'm here. We supported 13 athletes out of 550 which applied, and we not only selected them because of their skill level or just the interviews. We have a database of over a decade of athlete assessments. So we used that to our advantage. We did the sports psychology screening, where we interviewed their coaches, their families. We selected 13 athletes, supported them from a year. So these are the 13 athletes. 2 of them went to Asian Games for the first time. 2 of them went to Para-Asian Games for the first time. One of the shooters got selected in TOPS, which is the Olympic podium scheme. And they had on-the-house sports science support in terms of their strength and conditioning, physiotherapy, nutrition, psychology, daily basis workload and recovery management, their competition planning. So that's the level of depth which we go to with these athletes. So again, the 3 pillars are enabling high performance, longevity, and securing their future. Now, going ahead in the next year, we plan to have programs for para-athletes, for women athletes, for emerging sports, and also for athletes making comebacks after surgeries, because they are left in the lurch. No one really wants to support them, and I think Dr. Sir would also kind of identify with that. So how do we have a successful post-surgical rehabilitation to return to sport and not get injured again and again? And the last thing which also contributes to the bottleneck is helping young coaches understand the scientific approach to sport. So we have a coaches scholarship program also identified. And the last slide is, as Sporting Ethos, when we try to go to companies, we also get the opportunity to work as CSR implementation partners. So right now we are working with Coca-Cola Foundation and Hockey India for grassroots women's development in a 3-year project. We also carry out other grassroots programs that are currently in talks with certain companies to do community-based programs as well. And one announcement through this particular talk I want to make is that after setting up a first sports science and medicine center in Delhi, then a high performance center in the same location, next month at the center of your picture, we are setting up a center of excellence at the DDA Squash and Badminton Stadium, which is where we will take our efforts to the next level. So that's it from my end. Happy to answer any questions or take it offline. Thank you, and let's work together to help athletes inspire the rest of the youth and make it something which will become an example for other companies and countries to follow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rishabh. Please remain on stage. All right, everyone. Once again, can we give a huge round of applause to Mr. Rishabh Jaiswal? And to present a token of love and appreciation, I would like to call upon Mr. Rishi Sharma, co-founder and director, Brand Honchos. Let's applaud and welcome him on the stage, everyone. I hope all of you enjoyed the keynote speech. And once again, I'd like to thank Mr. Rishabh for shedding light on the fact that investing in human potential is a vital aspect of CSR. Your vision for incorporating